this now, millions of votes may effectively be lost if the Electoral Amendment Act is implemented in its current form. In fact, that's the concern of the Independent Candidates Association. 2 days of arguments about the Electoral Amendment Act concluded earlier today. The Constitutional Court has now reserved judgment in the matter between civil society organizations and government. Of course, earlier we spoke to Teretsilane, who unpacked some of the numbers. We've got our reporter now, Heidi Giokos, to bring us up to speed. And Heidi, let's talk about what this actually means for the voter on election day. Should they be worried at this time?
I wouldn't say they should be worried. I think we're just going to have to wait and see what the Constitutional Court rules on. We do know that judgment has been reserved. But essentially what's happening here is that you've had two urgent applications being heard at the highest courts in the land, the one being about the threshold when it comes to the amounts of signatures that need to be received, or rather collected, by independent candidates. They don't want it to be 15,000, which is where it's currently at the moment, because independent candidates have indicated it's going to take way too long. They are going to be unable to do this, which is really going to put them in the back foot when it comes to contesting in national elections. And then they also, the next application is around the seat composition. So it's currently 200 seats in National Assembly for independent candidates, where they are asking for 350 seats in National Assembly. This has all got to do, William, with the fact that independent candidates, feel as though they are not on the same playing field when it comes to political parties. And for example, the Home Affairs Department, which needs to respond to all of this, because essentially it's up to them to implement this Electoral Amendment Act, have indicated that the judgment that was handed down at the Constitutional Court in 2020, that's now been signed in earlier this year by the President, clearly stipulates that independent candidates can contest in the national elections, and these amendments are only going to further complicate things. And at the end of the day, it's not about how they contest, just as long as they can contest. The other issue is the IEC. The IEC is saying this is possibly going to be a logistical nightmare should the threshold and the seat composition be changed, indicating that whatever the Apex Court does decide on, it needs to be done as soon as possible, because the IEC needs to change its electoral systems, ballot papers. The tender goes out for the ballot papers, I think, in October. So there's a lot of logistical issues that need to be sorted, and there's a lot of pressure on the Constitutional Court to make this decision as quickly as possible. Let's listen to some of the arguments presented by the IEC today in Concord.
This is going to be ballots that go to the 200 seats. It's a single ballot. The problem is far more challenging.
That's 52 people were elected.
And of the 1,547 independents in 2021 local government election, 52 were elected. So it's an indication of the logistical problem. Final point I want to say, from their perspective, it's a simple case. Whatever the law says, the IEC will have to comply with and will do its best. But they conveyed to this court that too low a threshold creates logistical difficulties for precisely wanting to achieve what you want to achieve, a free, fair and manageable election.
And that's well and clear, Heidi. Obviously, the question then becomes, should the courts decide to amend this bill, what will that mean?
Well, if the Constitutional Court rules in favour of the Independent Candidates Association as well as One South Africa, this means that they won, which means that the threshold could possibly move, which means they don't have to receive or collect 15,000 signatures, and the seat composition will change from 200 to 350. But the issue around all of this, William, it's really a numbers game, and you had a lot of the legal representatives and senior counsel saying it's been so difficult to really figure out what's fair, because what is really fair? If you're an independent candidate, you're one person versus a political party. How do you balance the two? What is fair? Can it be fair if you are contesting as an independent candidate versus a political party? And at the end of the day, it does need to be free and fair elections. It does need to be constitutional, because in 2020, the Constitutional Court ruled that the Electoral Act in its current form then was unconstitutional because it did not allow for independent candidates to contest, and that was, of course, amended, and it was now signed in earlier this year by the president. But you have independent candidates saying, okay, it's all good and well that we can contest nationally, but there are some discrepancies and we are not equal here, and we should be equal, especially when it comes to elections.
Heidi Giokos, thank you so much for that clarity.